Peace reigned on Earth again. This world was saved by people with superpowers, eliminating bad people who were for the war. Such people were called heroes. And one of them, Teru Momijiyama, was a very fearful and shy girl. Leaving the subway, she bumps into a couple. She is led by something from her backpack, and she comes to the stage, where she changed into her costume and led the exit of the heroes. The kids aren't interested in Teru's performance, but one of the boys supports Teru. She embarrassedly left, giving the microphone to leader. Teru becomes ill after her speech in front of people, but Envilio comes out of the backpack and supports her. Suddenly he senses something wrong outside and asks Shy to help. The roller coaster stops on a loop. The people sitting there are in a panic, but Shy flies to them and saves her fans. Having saved the penultimate passenger, Teru notices how the roller coaster rushed at high speed with the last passenger. Shy manages to stop the ride with his jetpacks. The attraction crashes, and Teru notices that she was unable to save Aiko. Negative news spread very quickly. Teru locked herself in her room because of this news. Vilio supports her so that she stops worrying, but Teru is looking for a reason to encourage other heroes who were like action figures for her. Pepesha Andreanov suddenly appears in Teru's room, who was acting very relaxed. She was trying to cheer up the spirit of Teru, who still could not move on from that incident. Pepesha suddenly receives a new task and she leaves, not understanding why she came to Teru. In the CD store, Teru suddenly hears teenagers talking about Shy. Leaving the store, she decides to overcome herself and sees rescue vehicles in large numbers. Having arrived at the scene of the fire, Teru cannot transform into her costume and despairs, but she sees, like her little fan trying to be like her. Leaving offended, a piece of the building almost falls on the boy. Teru saves him, and she, overcoming her fears, finally transforms into her costume. As she climbs up, she blames herself for her actions. Already at the top, it seems to her that everyone has evacuated, but listening, she hears the cry of a child and instantly rushes to him. With the child was a mother whose life had come to an end. There was little time left, so Teru saved the baby, but she was hit by a shockwave of flames and she threw the child, but immediately captured him flying in the air. Teru realizes that she cannot take off, but a column of smoke, controlled by Pepesha, helps her. The girls handle the rescue and Pepesha's fans knocking her down. The Shy fan thanks her again for saving her and reports that his sister Aiko is on the mend. She is very happy to hear this. Pepesha scares Teru from behind, telling her that the woman and the child are alive, and Teru begins to cry with happiness. Pepesha remembers what she came for and goes into space with Teru. Arriving at a secret place for the heroes, they are met by Unilord, who really wanted to see Shy. When they meet, Teru blushes very much. Pepesha uses the nickname on Nai, and she begins to tell Shy in more detail about all the threats and debts of the hero. At school, Teru was thinking about this, and a new girl appears in her class. The same Aiko Koishikawa comes on crutches and introduces herself to the class. Full of embarrassment, Teru greets Aiko. Aiko's classmates talk to her and she mentions her problem, which affects Teru. The teacher calls Aiko to fill out the paperwork. Outside the school, Teru still remembers that moment. Vilio flies to Teru and gives her forgotten homework. Walking along the corridors, she thinks about resentment towards Shy. Suddenly she sees Aiko sitting in bad condition on the stairs. She takes her to the first aid station, where she is already much better. Teru again blames herself for that case. Aiko says that Teru is very similar at Shy because of her worries, and she decides to ask if she is angry with her, but Aiko respects her, because who would hate their savior? From such words, Teru begins to cry and runs to the restroom. Finding Teru strange, Ino feels an incomprehensible feeling. Stigma appears behind her and puts a ring on her so that she shows her true feelings. Suddenly she again has visions and seems to be out of her mind. Teru comes out of the restroom and sees Aiko sitting depressed. She opens her eyes and sees visions of Stigma, who talked about people's real personalities, and this personality began to manifest itself in Aiko. Teru is horrified. Aiko, who was suffering from pain, tries to explain everything to Teru, but at the moment she is surrounded by crystals, and she gets worse. Vilio warns about the danger to Teru. Suddenly Stigma appears again. Teru is horrified. Stigma explains that these crystals are Aiko's real feelings. Vilio tries to reason with her Teru. Stigma doesn't like how Teru keeps secrets with Vilio. He breaks the crystals so that Aiko can release all her emotions. Teru tries to calm Aiko down. Stigma disappears, and Aiko loses control of her emotions. Feeling hatred, Teru thinks that this hatred is because of her. Aiko tells how because of her, her parents had to save her at the cost of their lives. She blames herself for this, and begins to hate herself more and more. She tries to destroy herself. But in time Teru turns into Shy, and tries to calm Aiko down. Because of her support, she becomes more and more angry, and even tries to attack Teru. She tries to stop herself, and asks for help from Shy. Shy opens a portal where she sends herself and Aiko. Aiko attacks Shy again. She doesn't know what to do, and Vilio says that everything is because of the ring that Aiko now has. She tries to take the ring from her, but Ino repels her. Aiko begins to interpret a speech that should offend Shy. Vilio asks not to fall for her tricks, but Shy should listen to her in order to help her. Aiko hatefully attacks her. Shyness absorbs all the attacks into herself. Aiko remembers how at the funeral, her grandfather explained that accepting kindness and help from others is not bad, but still, Aiko did not understand this, and in the next world, she meets her parents who supported her spirit for the last time. Shy cried and hugged Aiko, calming her feelings. She manages to remove the ring from her and dispel the shackles of anger. She faints from her kindness. Stigma watched this. Having come to her senses, Aiko apologizes to Shy and she begins to tell her the thing that Aiko's parents said. Vilio reports the circumstances to Unilord. Aiko thanks Teru for her help. Several days pass. Teru goes out to meet Aiko. She thinks that her outfit is very attractive, but Vilio thinks it's not so. Aiko arrives at the meeting place and meets Vilio for the first time. She can already walk without crutches. She takes Teru out for a walk, and she also mentions her cute outfit. Walking around the city and the shopping center, Teru gets tired and Vilio says that it is because of social overload. Aiko is scared that Teru is a homebody. Sitting in a cafe, she apologizes for forcing her out of her comfort zone. Teru becomes embarrassed, and to cheer up the company, she recalls the incident from the destroyed first aid station. But this topic was sore for Aiko. The whole city then made fun of the non-existent story. Teru becomes awkward again. Aiko forgets about this and starts praising her for her heroic actions, which makes her think. Suddenly they hear a boy crying. They run up to him and find out that he is lost. Aiko is on the same wavelength with him, and they start looking for his parents with him. Teru is jealous of her treatment of children, and after a few minutes, they find the boy's parents. The boy thanks the girls for their help and Aiko asks him to be just as kind. The awkward parents say goodbye and thank the girls. Aiko is excited that she asked someone with such a request that Teru had to do, but she also thanks her for her courage. The girls continue to walk. Aiko notices a poster with another hero. Stardust was a rock star and the only one who revealed his identity. While she was praising him, Pepesha calls Teru and says that they are having a meeting. She also calls Aiko into orbit. Stardust will also be there. Pepesha asks not to worry about his appearance. David Wonder Jones was filming a film at the time. Pepesha meets Shy and meets Aiko. She praises Teru for the ring. Before leaving for the portal, she tells Vilio to stay on Earth. Aiko is surprised by the ground outside along with Shy. Pepesha calls them and tells them about the plans for Stigma. They enter the room where the Unilord was preparing borscht for the guests. She introduces herself and wants to tell him more about Stigma, but before that she treats the guests to food. Everyone enjoys Unilord's cooking. Aiko asks to take a photo, and Unilord takes a photo of her with the others on a funny background. Aiko slips and is saved by Stardust, who came to the call. At the table, Unilord talks about the appearance of Stigma in Japan. This is not the first time Stardust has encountered him. In his country, Stigma put a ring on his friend, and only by cutting off his finger was it possible to calm him down. Pepesha asks not to scare Shy and Aiko, but he believes that heroes should not be afraid. Closer to the point, Unilord called everyone together for Shy to fight Stardust. Pepesha is trying to take her to train with him, but if Shy meets Stigma again, then she must be very strong. Shy doesn't mind fighting Stardust, but if she loses, she won't be a hero anymore. She agrees to these conditions. While in the ring, she is very afraid. Stardust announces the rules of the battle, but for Shy they will be very serious, so it's enough for her to hit him in the face. Unilord will train Shy combat experience. Pepesha asks to save Shy in case of danger, but Stardust will not let her do this. The fight begins. Shy wants to hit Stardust, but her attack misses every time she wanted to hit him. Stardust shows how to hit and slams Shy to the ground. He tells her how he lacks empathy and doesn't feel bad about beating people like that. Having risen to his feet, Shy again tries to hit him. Aiko does not understand what is wrong. Unilord talks about the powers of the hero's bracelets. Each hero has the power of the heart, and it is impossible to break through this power with Stardust. After a few blows, Stardust throws Shy away. He wants her to get angry and fight for real. He puts her on the ground. Pepesha sees that everything is bad, but Stardust orders her not to get into the fight. After a while, Shy gathers all her courage seeing the fire. She gets to her feet and her powers begin to awaken. Determined, she activates her fire powers and allows Stardust to dodge at high speed. He sees her strength is very weak, but Shy remembers that he dodged, reminding him of this. He now does not dodge her attack and throws her. He says that her powers are hampered by naivety and he again calls himself heartless, but then Shy remembered how he calculated all her powers and this means that he is kind and that he has a heart. Shy gets to her feet, activating the fire in her palms. Her words touch his heart and his strength gradually begins to weaken. During the battle, he recalled how they hated him for his heartlessness, and he considered Shisniashka's words to be madness. He remembers how his friend wanted him to become the kindest person in the world. He doesn't understand why he's drawn to memories. Shai tries her best to hit Stardust and manages to touch his cheek before turning into a normal person. Shai loses consciousness. Stardust explains to Pepesha that Shai is very weak for heroes like them, but she managed to break through all the conditions of the battle. He asks him to convey his congratulations to her. After the fight, Pepesha thanks Stardust for the fight. He likes her straightforwardness, and Pepesha becomes more and more irritated. Stardust moves away from her threats. Waking up, Teru found herself in the infirmary, where she was blamed by Pilsdunnit for her long sleep. Not understanding who is standing in front of her, Pils vividly introduces herself as Lady Black and that she is a healer. Teru claps for Lady Black's performance. Dr. Schwartz enters the room and apologizes for Lady Black's rudeness. He gives her glasses. He introduces himself and Lady Black as the Stardust hero's personal doctors. Lady Black says that her heart heals others and insults Teru for her lack of heart powers. She conveys congratulations from Stardust, and Teru can remain a hero. Lady Black is angry at her shortcomings and says that if she is ashamed of herself, then she should stop being a hero. Dr. Schwartz apologizes for her again and leaves. Aiko wakes up and praises her friend for her fight. It's time for friends to go home. Teru promises to become strong, but begins to cry. Aiko cheers Teru up before leaving. At home, Rivio asks Teru to turn on the news. Stigma again reminds of himself. Vilio and Teru must be on alert. Teru's spirit rises. Teru, being in a stationery store, is afraid to call the seller. After a while, the grandmother comes out and sees Teru, who came here all the time as a child. Chihiro talks about how lonely she is here without her husband and visitors. Teru came just to look at the painting of the Dandelion Mountain, which was painted by Chihiro's husband. At home, Teru begins to worry and Vilio supports her. Suddenly her doorbell rang. Opening it, an unknown girl stood there. She began to get angry because she was not remembered. The girl introduces herself brightly. It turns out this is Lady Black. Because of the people outside, she asks to go inside. Pils checks Teru's condition. Her skills are still at their best. Teru wants to ask her for something. The girls arrive at Chihiro's store, and Pils introduces himself as a medical university student. She follows Teru's request and goes to treat her back. Chihiro wants to climb the mountain if everything goes well. Pils wants to join her. The group goes hiking. Teru admits that she doesn't like to walk. Pils ignores her and she continues on her way. On the way, she tells the truth that she doesn't like hiking at all, but because of ridicule as a child, she was stubborn and continued to do it. Teru was worried about her. Pils asks about her physical fitness, and she, hearing that everything is bad, runs to the very top along with Chihiro. Standing at the top, an exhausted Teru comes to Pils and asks to tell the story further, but Pils silences her because Chihiro was remembering her husband. Moving further away, Pils before the start reveals that she has no legs. She had an accident as a child and was very angry when she was ridiculed for her stubbornness to move on. Teru is terribly surprised by her persistence. Chihiro offers to go downstairs. The grandmother thanks the girls for the day and asks Pils to come back again. Teru thanks Pils. She makes her feel embarrassed. Pils doesn't mind making Teru a normal heroine and leaves. Teru tries to regain her fire skills. Vilio reminds her of school and she gets embarrassed. At school, Teru wonders how Pils controls powers without a suit. Aiko, who is in a new uniform, greets her. Aiko noticed how worried Teru was and asks what happened. Teru does not want to tell her, and her friends arrive on time. Teru was so focused on the fire all day that she forgot about her school. Aiko wants to go home, but Teru would like to stay at school. Walking along the corridor, she admires the flame symbol. Suddenly a tall girl who is the author appears behind her. She offers to look at her calligraphy club. Due to her shyness, Teru agrees. The girl takes her to the club, but Teru has absolutely no time for this. She meets another member. Teru observes the art and begins to like it, praising the girl for her work. The guy suggests trying his hand at calligraphy. Teru is good at it. The guy, drawing a new symbol, tells how people who are into calligraphy take it to heart. These words support Teru, and she is forced to go home. At home, Teru gets down to business and finds a way to set his heart on fire through his passion for calligraphy. Having drawn a symbol of fire, she finally succeeds, but she does not notice how her sheet is burning. Shai remembers everything that happened. Stigma releases a crystallized girl with a request to go together to return the old world. Teru still tells Aiko how she finally mastered the power of the heart. Vilio calls Teru, and the Unilord calls her again. Aiko says goodbye to Teru. As she flies away, she wishes her luck. At the meeting, the Unilord calls upon Pepesha and Shai to send them to investigate a place where she senses something is wrong. Their goal will be the North Pole, where they will meet another hero. Shai hopes that she knows him. Unilord says that if they lose, she will deprive them of sweets, but she is just joking. Pepesha and Shai arrive at the North Pole, where it was very cold. They arrive at the base, where a man tried to wake up a boy sleeping next to him. Papesha approaches him, and the boy, seeing the heroes, immediately gets to his feet. As it turned out, they met the Chinese hero Lai Ming. He meets Shai. At the base, the man trusts the heroes with the rescue operation Dimitri. Shai does not lose heart. They are picked up by helicopter. Shai wants to talk to Meng Long. He also wants to chat with them and take advice from them. Meng Long tells Shai how he fought Stigma and is surprised that she was able to drive him away without a fight. He admits that he doesn't like fighting either, and Shai remembers how he fought Stigma on the news. Meng Long asks if that sounded childish. Shai supports him, saying that this is the principle of all women. Meng Long is upset that she thought he was a girl. Approaching their destination, the crew cannot contact Dimitri. Suddenly the crew notices how ice blocks begin to grow under them. Shai is surprised by nature, but their helicopter is immediately pierced by one of the blocks. The heroes save the crew and see Stigma's victim coming towards them. Sveta wants to destroy them in order to get the coveted warmth. First of all, she attacks Papesha. Shai dispels her ice with flames. Papesha captures Sveta with smoke, but she immediately throws her away. She makes a strong attack on Papesha, but she dodges in time. She tells Shai that the enemy is very serious because she does not have a ring. Papesha asks Meng Long to take the people away and tells Shai to help her. Shai reflects Sveta's icicles with flame. Suddenly she falls under the water and makes a sudden attack, knocking Shai off her feet. She almost pierces her, but Papesha does not allow her to do this. She puts her on the ground and orders her to tell who she is. Papesha asks Shai to report everything to Unilord, but Shai gets lost and forgets that she can call her through the bracelets. Sveta begins to like Shai. She scares Papesha with a creepy look and suddenly pierces her and turns her into an ice block. Shai gets scared and tries to attack Sveta with flames. She likes the warmth of the flame. She wants to get Shai. Meng Long comes to the rescue. They are both worried about Papesha. Shai notices a mark on Sveta's face that wasn't there before. Sveta decides to finish off Meng Long first. She creates ice blades from her hands, but attacking Meng Long, he breaks them. Sveta is wary of him and makes a long-range attack. Shai reflects it with her flame. Sveta tries to stop the attacker Meng Long, but Shai does not allow it. Meng Long pierces her with air claws, but Sveta does not feel pain, but the attack made her sleep. Rejoicing at the victory, they remember about Papesha. Shai goes to save her. Suddenly Meng Long was captured by something. Stigma appears out of nowhere with his gang to take Sveta. He also tries to destroy Meng Long, but is saved by the wounded Papesha. Stigma creates space in his world and calls it a Malaric. Stigma leaves the heroes. Unilord watched the recording. It seems Stigma is gathering fighters. Unilord apologizes for the inconvenience. Shai gets a call from Lady Black and says that she cured Papesha. In the ward, Papesha says that she is fine, even after having a hole in her stomach. Lady Black speaks for her shortcomings, and that enemies can harm them through the suit. Papesha wonders who the girl is who called her the nickname that only her close ones call her. She also sees the strange names of the people who gave Stigma, as if his world is a shelter. Papesha doesn't know what they will do against Stigma. Unilord invites guests. It was Aiko who came to tell what happened that day. Unilord reveals that the Stigma ring was the embodiment of his world. On that day, Aiko and Stigma's hearts were connected. Stigma's real intentions seem to be that he wants to take over the world. Aiko says that she saw being controlled by the action of the ring, seeing his soul in visions. Aiko thinks that his dream is to make peace in the world. The girls, having heard all the reports, think that his goal is childish and strange. Shai thanks Aiko for everything. Papesha begins to suspect that Sveta was like her in childhood, which makes her feel bad. Papesha goes to her room. Shai meets Papesha in the hallway. She would like to support the depressed Papesha, but she teases her for being shy and gives advice on how to look confident when she supports. Papesha leaves, but Shai remembered her words. They want to unite. Lady Black and the others watch them from around the corner. Teru amuses children in a shopping center by dressing up as a cartoon character, but the children don't seem to understand her. As soon as Papesha came to her senses, Vilio told Teru that they wanted to take her on stage. Teru really didn't want to, but Vilio wants her to be in the spotlight. Like a real hero, they will give a gift for her performance, and Teru can no longer refuse. Shy Girl dresses up as a character, and it turns out that her image maker is a fan of hers. She said that she looked like that same character from the cartoon, but it was not like that. Vilio also dresses up as one of the heroes. The consultant asks Sky to go on stage, which she really didn't want to do. But she was already sitting on stage in front of the children. Here they will ask her questions. But Shy doesn't understand how she can be interesting, but she is surprised how many children want to ask her a question. She answers each of their questions. At one point, the chatter is stopped by a boy who was a devoted fan of this very heroine. He expresses his dissatisfaction, and the other children drive him away. Before leaving, he calls Shy names. After the performance, Shai wants to know why the boy didn't like her. He says that his character is not like her at all and leaves, but trips, letting go of his character's balloon. Shai returns the balloon, accidentally saying lines from the boy's favorite heroine. He begins to respect her, telling her a lot about the cartoon. Sitting in the locker room, the consultant gives Shai all the CDs from the cartoon for her performance, which Shai didn't expect to see. At home, she cries for the character. Vilio notices how she is hooked on this cartoon. Aiko controls Teru before takeoff. Teru flies to Russia to find Sveta. She tries to find Pepesha and gets lost. Pepesha meets her, again in a drunken state. If she was sober, Teru would not recognize her. Pepesha takes Teru to the place where she grew up. It was an orphanage. Pepesha asks Teru to calm down. They are met by director Isak. He is glad to see her. He also meets Teru and praises her for her knowledge of Russian, with whom she communicated using bracelets. Isak brings the girls to the children, who were so happy to see Pepesha. Teru finds out how kind Pepesha is. Isak praises her. Pepesha explains the purpose of her visit to the orphanage. She receives photo albums to see herself as a child. Pepesha tells how good it was for her here, and even now nothing has changed here. She looks at her photos and calls Teru to look at her always dissatisfied face. There were also funny photos. One of the photos falls out. Pepesha picks it up and starts to feel sad. It was a photo with her mother. She talks about how she loved her mother even though she was silent, but this silence was changed by drinks, after which her mother was always cheerful and talkative. Teru notices how much Pepesha looks like her mother. Isak invites the girls for lunch. After having lunch, Pepesha asks the director for drinks. Hearing this, Natalia comes with the treasured drinks. Pepesha is very happy to meet her. She also notices Teru and asks her to feel at home. The girls are having fun. Natalia notices how she also looks like her mother. Natalia tells how she also grew up here and even got a job here because no one wanted to take a girl without parents. Natalia forgets herself and offers to look at her childhood photo album. Natalia shows how beautiful she was as a child. Pepesha can't believe her eyes and starts getting rowdy. Teru likes their friendliness, but suddenly she notices something. On the way to the orphanage, two from Amalric were already walking. Teru points to the girl next to Natalia, and it turns out that it was Pepesha's mother, who looked just like Sveta. Sveta was already near the orphanage. Pepesha still can't believe what's happening. Suddenly outside the window, everyone hears children crying and decides to go outside. Everything was frozen on the street. Pepesha is wary of the appearance of Amalric and therefore asks Teru to transform. Having transformed, Shai goes to defrost the child. But under the ice was Kekarakura, who managed to fool Shai. The girl was mentally unstable. Sveta comes to Pepesha and apologizes for last time. Pepesha suspects stigma of all actions. Although Sveta did not remember anything before the North Pole, this place was filled with warmth. She mocked Pepesha's mother. Out of anger, Pepesha captured these two with smoke. It seems that Sveta considers this place her home. She begins to remember how stigma talked about places in people's hearts. The ice begins to crack, and black smoke appears from Sveta's hands, which engulfed the entire shelter. Suddenly, black crystals appeared from the ground. Pepesha's smoke turns to ice. This space Sveta called the home of her heart, her Amalric. The crowd sees the crystal madness from afar. Stigma also notices, and is not going to interfere with Sveta. Inside the curtain, peaceful people lose consciousness, which Sveta did not expect. She freezes Pepesha and Shai, and approaches Natalia. Shai breaks out of the ice and tries to take Sveta away, but Kekarakura protects her. Kekarakura is annoyed by the seriousness of Shai, now every time she tries to cheer her up in strange ways, but Shai never laughed, but Sveta supported her. Kekarakura explains in more detail about her intentions. She wants to cheer everyone in this world. Shai wants to stop them. Pepesha grabs them both and throws them to the ground. Sveta sends Kekarakura towards Shai, but Pepesha pushes her away with her smoke. Sveta catches Kekarakura, and they do something strange. Kekarakura trips her with her hammer and is stopped by Pepesha, who shoots her with a cannon. Sveta softens the blow and Kekarakura wants more attention from Sveta. She organizes a circus again. While they are distracted, Pepesha asks Shai to cover her in order to get the people out of here. She notices a weak point in the curtains and takes the people with her while flying on the smoke. The villains notice her escape. Sveta tries to stop Pepesha, but Shai blocks her attacks. Shai creates a shot of flame, which Kekarakura cannot dodge. Sveta consoles her. Pepesha flies over the curtains, but immediately appears again here. They will not be able to leave this place, since this is the heart of Sveta. Pepesha breaks through Sveta's attack, taking the others with her. She cannot understand why they cannot leave this place. Sveta decides to tell how this place became her heart. It was made of 3 components: peace, emotions, and memory. Just her memory is not enough to complete her heart. This conversation only bought her time. Pepesha's relatives suddenly get up and head towards her. She dodges. Shai wants to stop them, but Kekarakura hugs her tightly. She put on a fire suit and now Shy's attacks have nothing to do with her. Sveta explains that she shared a piece of her heart with Pepesha's relatives. Simply put, she manipulated them. She again directs her family to Pepesha, now they command the ice. Stopping, everyone began to talk to Pepesha. Everyone talked about their unreal dreams. It drives her crazy. The boy ran and asked Pepesha to stay under the curtain so as not to go out into the cruel world. The boy's real emotions froze. Pepesha gets angry and grabs Sveta. Shy asks them to calm down, but Kekarakura, who is holding her, finds this not interesting. Sveta, having waited for Pepesha's anger, begins to absorb her spiritual energy. Sveta makes Pepesha remember the times with her mother, or rather with Sveta. A large crack forms under them. Sveta hates this false world more and more. Before transforming, she remembers her past life, how she grew up here. She raised Pepesha and lived a carefree life, but she did not understand what was wrong with this outside world. Mother in a new guise, Pepesha reminds of herself. She creates sharp ice needles around them. Latana recalls how, while working on handing out flyers, people were cruel to her. She lived in poverty, looked for a new job, and gave her last food to Pepesha. Due to the crisis in the country, she constantly quit. Arriving home, she sees Pepesha, who fell asleep on the table. On the table there was a drawing of the two of them happy, with sweets. Looking at the new job, the tenant reminds her of her debts, no matter how many times she defends her. There was a sad atmosphere at the evening table. Pepesha gave her food to her hungry mother. Because of this, she accidentally gets angry and now feels guilty. Because of this attitude, Latana was thinking about leaving the world, and for Pepesha to live in a shelter, she passes by a homeless man and goes in to buy a goodbye cake. Entering the pastry shop, she is greeted by a saleswoman. Latana would like to take a cake, but still settles on cookies due to financial difficulties. The saleswoman, with a kind heart, gives her the cake for free in exchange for a tasting. Latana thanks her very much and leaves. After such kindness, Latana decides not to give up. She wants to come home and apologize to Pepesha. Lost in her daydreams, suddenly that same homeless man pushes Latana off the bridge. She loses all her strength and leaves this world. Pepesha recognizes her mother and gives in. They move away. Kekarakura moves away from Shy and blasts her, calling it a joke. Pepesha and Sveta, standing inside the ice floes, recalled their lives. Sveta is getting worse, but Pepesha's heart can't stand it, and she returns to her normal form. Sveta tries to conquer Pepesha, but Shy, who got out of Kekarakura's hands, doesn't let her. Shy breaks into Sveta's ice cover. She wants to extinguish Sveta's icy heart. Sveta decides to release all the powers of her heart. An ice storm is created around her, and wings grow from her back. She directs an icy beam at Shy. She reflects this icy stream to the depths. Shy will flare up. She reflects all the attacks that Sveta inflicted on her. At high speed, she manages to hit Sveta. Shy remembers how this anger works inside Sveta. She tries to convince her. Sveta turns Shy into ice, but she breaks through from inside and shouts that Sveta came here out of love for Pepesha. She tells how Pepesha feels, what love she feels for her mother, tells her goals, but Sveta cannot understand this, so she remains in her opinion. She freezes Shy again. But she breaks through again. She invites the tearful Pepesha to say all the words for her mother. Shy and Sveta collide. Watching Pepesha admired Shy. She activates herself and destroys Sveta's ice. Having transformed, she invites her mother to quarrel. Pepesha runs to the coast, where her mother, who had left this world, was already lying. She regretted that she was silent about her feelings. But now the time has come, she decides to show who Spirits is. Approaching her, she mentions their promise. Sveta does not like her words. Pepesha wants her mom to tell her what she hides in her heart. This makes Sveta remember fun times with her daughter. Kekarakura intervenes in their conversation and begins to manipulate Sveta's feelings, causing her to lose control. A crystal emerges from her, breaking free. Everything in the whole country is frozen. Shy wants to join forces with Pepesha so that her mother heard her feelings. Sveta begins to feel real cold, creating barriers due to the strength of the heroes. Kekarakura flies off and is taken by Shy. In Sveta's subconscious, she was cracking from the cold, but she was warmed by the warmth of her daughter. She came to her senses and began to return to normal. Finally, Pepesha hugged her mother. Sveta becomes warm and her strength begins to weaken. Pepesha remembers the past, where in the orphanage, Natalia gave letters from her mother to read, which she wrote over time. They said how, while she's in a foggy state of mind, Latana told how she tried to make her daughter happier, asking about her desire to be in a shelter, but she did not want to live without her mother. After this story, she notices her childhood drawing. Natalia said that it was because of this drawing that Latana's wishes came true, but they were not what Pepesha wanted. She began to cry. Pepesha grew up without forgetting her mother at all. Even after becoming a hero, her ray of light was her mother. She confesses her love to her. Sveta's space is destroyed. She comes to her senses. Kekarakura escapes from Shy's hands, again interfering with the girl's conversation. Sveta asks her to leave because her time is already running out. Kekarakura returns to Amalric in tears. Hearing what Sveta said, Pepesha asks what is happening. The mother explains that this was her life, directly connected to stigma, and her body itself is feelings. She asks to destroy her boss. She says that his strength is to make people's dreams come true, and therefore, Pepesha's dream of meeting his mother, he realized. He couldn't fulfill his dream, so he created people like Sveta. It seems he wants to destroy this world by distorting these dreams. She thanks Shai for her help in meeting her daughter. She believes in heroes and her body begins to disappear. Sveta asks Pepesha for the last time to do something. Sveta and Pepesha drink together, saying that this was their dream. They chat nicely, talking about life and heroes. The mother's time is already running out. Before disappearing, she finally confesses her love to her daughter. Shai comes to her and sees how Pepesha easily accepted the disappearance of her loved one. They leave and Shai notices a ring on the ground. After the fight, the children from the orphanage recognize Shai and cling to her. Natalia tells Pepesha that the children are fine. Natalia really didn't think Pepesha was a hero. She began to talk about how her mother acted like an adult, and when she acted, she only helped others. She considered her a hero. Still, Shai asks for help. Pepesha calls everyone into the house and saves poor Shai. Vilio calls Shai. He was very worried that the connection was lost, so they called for help. Stardust and Lady Black appear from the portal. They learn that help is not needed. Stardust says that the heroes will now have connections with the government so that there will be no problems. Stardust regrets wasting his time. Pepesha will report to Unilord later, but for now she will look after the children. Before leaving, Pepesha gives the ring to Stardust. Stardust leaves, but Shyness stops him and thanks him for the training. Stardust has already forgotten about it, but remembers. He doesn't ask for thanks and still gives some life advice. Stardust leaves, leaving Lady Black. Lady Black wants to help Shai, but she is fine and therefore goes to examine the children. Teru and Pepesha say goodbye to Natalia and Isaac. On the way, Teru talks about Amalric, but Pepesha is more interested in having fun, so she heads to a bar nearby. Teru stops and thinks about Stigma's goals. Pepesha asks her to keep up and they go to the bar together. It seems Stigma is up to something. After flying back to Japan, Teru goes to school and meets up with Aiko. Aiko tells how she liked the souvenirs from Russia, but Teru seems uneasy. She walked sluggishly and spoke emotionlessly. Aiko suspects something. Suddenly Teru faints and Aiko takes her to the infirmary. She reports this to the school and now Teru is excused from classes. Aiko wants to help Teru get home. She takes her on her back and leads her towards the house. Teru is confused. Arriving home, Aiko tells Teru to change clothes and go to bed, and she goes to the store. Teru is embarrassed, and she asks not to worry about her so much. Aiko explains that this is normal, and goes to help her further. Teru goes to bed and is also taken care of by Vilio. Teru feels lonely, and when she fell asleep, she remembered how her older sister took care of her. She spoke in her sleep. When she woke up, he surprised Aiko sitting next to her. Aiko doesn't even mind what she said. Aiko brought her water and medicine. Teru says that she is like an older sister to her, and Aiko finds out that she is no longer there. She apologizes, but for Teru this is nothing. Aiko becomes a better person after learning that heroes are like ordinary people. Aiko leaves Teru alone, calling her by name. Teru changes her mind about friendship. She comes to school and also calls Aiko by name. In the world of Amalric, Kekarakura was fishing. An enraged Baragaki comes to her, not understanding what she is doing here. Kekarakura is angry that he doesn't call her by name. She explains that she is catching Sveta. Baragaki gets more and more angry. Having caught another fish, she throws it to the others. Kekarakura becomes more and more angry because of her name. The two are calmed down by Inori. Inori blesses this world. She seems strange. She reveals that their leader is preparing to attack. Stigma entails the beginning of his world.